We are the home for the Kings, Raiders, the NFL, and the A's. It's Sactown Sports 1140. It's the new spot for local sports talk in the afternoon. Cattles and Ramie.
I describe him as the best, obviously.
It's Cattles.
He throws it out there. Speaks his mind. That's cool.
It's Ramie.
He's supposed to make people laugh. He's just an expert at it.
Cattles and Ramie. Sactown Sports 1140.
Ready to do a radio show? No, you're not.
No, I'm not. Now I am.
He said I am with his microphone
The
off.
last few days I've been sitting in that chair where I can't turn my mic on and off.
Is that still a thing?
I think so.
I can't turn my mic off?
I don't think
And
so.
on?
I think that's all in Verlad's hands.
I can turn it off,
He holds the power.
I believe.
I don't think you can.
Why do we not know this? Like 3 weeks after we got the new equipment. I've been in the studio for about, 3 shows since we got the equipment, so at least I have an excuse.
And I told you, when I walk in and things aren't working, I just go, things aren't working. I don't know what's going on. That's all I can do. That's not my area of expertise.
This doesn't work, Chris. Doesn't work. You let me know what's going on here, Chris. I'll just talk when that microphone's on.
And then I just get out of the way until things are working again. That's how I operate.
Cattles and Ramie, Sactown Sports on a Tuesday. Thanks for joining us as always. It is much appreciated. Well, the last 2 or 3 months, Ramie, we spent talking about Kevin Durant. And really, it feels like the last 2 or 3 years.
Since I got here.
Yeah.
Like literally since I got here.
KD drama all over the place. And we heard it all, right? We heard that KD wanted out. And then he had this meeting with Joe Tsai, the team owner, going back a couple of weeks ago, where he said it's either me or, Marks and Nash. Ooh, he drew the line in the sand.
And then there was that report that he would retire.
Yes.
He would retire before coming back to play for the Brooklyn Nets, which he shot down immediately on Twitter.
He quickly
will believe anything.
He quickly shot that down on Twitter. So he was supposedly drawing the line in the sand.
Mm-hmm.
It's either me or them. And apparently not so much anymore because everybody got together yesterday, a Yaya Brotherhood meeting somewhere. And I don't know if they shared s'mores and, had drinks or whatever they did, but apparently everybody now feels good, or at least good enough
Kumbaya.
to say that Durant is going to stay in Brooklyn, ... for now. Here was Shams Charania on the Pat McAfee show earlier today.
From everything I've been told, that the outcome of that meeting yesterday between Kevin Durant, his business manager, Rich Kleiman, everyone from the Nets, Sean Marks, Steve Nash, ownership, they all agreed that it's in everyone's best interest, both sides, to move on. No trade was happening. It was clear. And so for Kevin Durant, if he really wanted to get out of Brooklyn, this was going to get even uglier. You had training camp coming up in 1 month, and that was really going to be the point. Kevin Durant was going to have to decide, do I show up to camp? Do I show up disgruntled? Or do I just hold out? And before it even got to that, Kevin Durant met and decided that he was going to stay a Brooklyn Net. I think both sides looked around from everything I've been told, and the outcome of that meeting was this is in everyone's best interest.
This feels like a meeting that should have happened a long time ago, and Shams said as much today with Pat McAfee.
I do believe that feelings were aired out in that meeting yesterday. I don't know exactly how long that meeting went, but anytime you have a meeting with all those stakeholders, and this is the first time they met since the Nets regular season and season ended on April 23rd. This meeting probably should have happened months ago, guys. Like, this should have happened right after the season ended, when Kevin Durant was displeased with how the year went. There were a lot of issues, underlying concerns that happened after you finished that year. This meeting should have happened then. It takes 2.5 months to happen, and I guess better late than never.
Did they know that KD was upset? Remember we played the audio after they got swept by the Celtics, and somebody asked KD about Steve Nash continuing as the head coach, and he just did nothing but defend the coach and throw all the excuses out there that he could come up with? Did they even know that this guy was that upset?
I would think that there was at least something spoken behind closed doors. Kevin Durant, I mean, and we'll talk about this later. He will clap back at absolutely anybody, everybody, and nobody on Twitter. But when it comes to like basketball things in-house, Kevin Durant isn't looking for drama. Kevin Durant has never been one to really stir things up or rock the boat. He left Oklahoma City, but he just went and explored free agency and left and had nothing but good things to say on his way out the door. Same thing in Golden State. I think that was him being the good soldier at the podium that day and saying, oh no, I love Steve Nash. Everything is still great here. But there had to be something spoken behind closed doors, and it was kept behind closed doors until this thing started to get ugly. And then I would guess somebody with the Nets put it out there that Kevin Durant said, it's either me or Marks and Nash, just to, so the organization could save some face and kind of throw Kevin Durant out there to say he's the one who's causing this problem and creating this standoff between us and our biggest superstar.
Let me tell you what happened in Brooklyn. I don't even have to be in Brooklyn. I don't have to be in these meetings. I don't have to have phone calls or texts with Kevin Durant or Kyrie or Sean Marks or Steve Nash or Joe Tsai or anybody.
I mean, that would be good if you had.
It would have been great.
You're right.
Would have been ahead of this. But
Yes.
let me tell you what happened in Brooklyn. Kyrie wanted a long-term deal with the Nets on his terms. The Nets said no. That set all of this in motion. KD eventually got to the point, hey, if you're not going to stand by my guy, one of my BFFs, then I want out. That was trying to leverage the Nets into bending backwards and giving Kyrie what he wanted. That didn't work. The Nets went out. The Nets talked to teams. The Nets talked to teams asking for so much that they knew there was no team that was going to be able or willing to give them what they were asking for. So KD goes back. KD's frustrated. So it's either them or me approach to the ownership. And the ownership called the bluff. The ownership looked at KD and they said, this is not the kind of guy that's going to sit out. This is not the guy who's going to pull a Ben Simmons or an Anthony Davis. He's not going to come up with a hangnail and he sits for 3 months. He is too much of a basketball player. This was Brooklyn's plan. Ramie, I talked about it going back several weeks ago. The Nets knew they did not want to trade Kevin Durant. They want to get rid of Kyrie. There's no doubt. But they did not want to get rid of Kevin Durant. So they knew if they asked for such a ridiculous price, they could go out there and say, hey, KD, we tried. We tried. A deal couldn't come together.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you just stay here? We got a chance to win a championship. Look at this team that you have. If we do trade you to a team, they're going to be gutted. Let's just make this work.
I'm not saying you're wrong. That might have been the plan from the beginning. But I also think it's entirely possible that the Nets were open to trading Kevin Durant when he came to him and demanded to get out. Because, and you've talked about this before, Nick, sometimes, and especially when you're talking about somebody the caliber of a Kevin Durant and the sway and the influence that he holds, if a guy doesn't want to be there, as great a talent as he is, and you just signed him to a new 4-year contract, you maybe don't want him around. It's maybe more trouble than it is to try and keep him in the building than it's worth.
The only way they were going to keep him is if a team just went crazy.
But I don't even think it's crazy necessarily. I think it's entirely possible they went out there looking for value and would have traded Kevin Durant if they got value for him. But the value changed with the Rudy Gobert trade, or at least the Nets thought that the value changed with the Rudy Gobert trade. That's a trade that was like an inflection point, I think, in NBA trades. And they happen in every sport every few years. The last one in the NBA involved the Nets when they gave up everything to get Garnett and Paul Pierce from the Boston Celtics and try and put that thing together. The Alex Rodriguez contract was that kind of deal in baseball where all 29 other owners pulled back and went, whoa, what are we doing here right now? You know what I mean? The Herschel Walker trade in football made NFL owners and front offices around the league do that.
Right.
I think it's entirely possible the Nets were open to trading Kevin Durant, but Rudy Gobert and the Jazz and the Timberwolves broke the NBA trade market so badly that the Nets couldn't find what they thought Kevin Durant was worth out there.
See, I would be prone to agree with you on that if this stuff didn't happen, early in the process. Like we were told, hey, the Nets want not one but 2 all-stars. Hey, the Nets don't want just, 3 or 4 picks. They want 5 picks. Hey, the Nets don't just want Jaylen Brown. They want Marcus Smart, another rotation player, maybe 2 other rotation players, and multiple picks on top of it. it got to the point where you were reading these stories. There was a story yesterday from Shams saying, oh, look, the Memphis Grizzlies are interested in Kevin Durant. And you read the story and it says, well, they're not willing to offer Jaren Jackson Jr. or Desmond Bane. Well, they're not really interested in Kevin Durant then. Like if you're legitimately interested in Durant, then you put one of those guys on the table. Celtics put the best deal on the table by all reports, and that was Jaylen Brown, Derek White, and a pick. I think teams looked at this and said, well, first of all, we don't know if we can trust this guy because he just signed a 4-year extension. Now he wants out. Secondly, is this just a leverage play by the Nets? The Nets played this perfect. They were not going to give up Kevin Durant unless they were given an embarrassment of riches. And they knew they had the leverage with that contract, and they knew that Kevin Durant was going to play because that's how he is wired.
But
he's not going to quit.
Do you think that was the plan from the beginning, or do you think they went out and explored the market, and because of partly how much it's changed because of Rudy Gobert, they came back to Kevin Durant and said, look, we can't find enough value for you out there, and we're not putting ourselves behind the 8 ball to trade you. So if you don't want to play for us, we're going to have a standoff when training camp comes. But that's up to you.
I think both can be true. I think they could look at this and say, all right, this is Kevin Durant. We're going to ask for the moon. And we're going to ask for the moon knowing that we're unlikely going to get the moon because he's already limited our options by coming out and saying Phoenix and Miami. And this is all going to circle back and come back to us. I think they knew from the beginning that it was very, very, very unlikely that any team in the NBA would meet their demand because it just didn't make sense. It didn't make sense for the Celtics to give up too much. It didn't make sense for Miami with the Ben Simmons contract. We went through that. Mm-hmm. I think they knew that. So it was, hey, we're going to ask for everything. And if we get everything, then yeah, we can live with that trade. But we know where this is headed. We know these teams are not going to do that. That's how I feel. I want to get people's thoughts on this. Again, Kevin Durant is going to stay in Brooklyn, ... for now.
No, it's long-term. You didn't say that?
Yeah.
It's a long-term marriage.
I want to get to the idea of this being a long-term marriage because somebody tweeted that. And boy, oh boy. Are we making those jumps that quickly? Do we make the jump that quickly that we go from he wants out, it's either them or me, to, oh, it's going to be a great marriage? Want your thoughts? 916-339-1140 is the text line. YouTube, check us out. Sactown Sports 1140. A couple more thoughts on KD. Also, Ramie has a question for me.
Oh, do I?
We'll find out what it is together because I have no idea in 90 seconds.
Sactown Sports 1140 is broadcasting live on YouTube. It's the new spot for local sports talk in the afternoon. Cattles and Ramie. Sactown Sports 1140.
Get to this question that Ramie has for me in a couple of minutes. And no, I don't have any idea what the question is. I do want to remind you, what is going on with this copy, by the way? What are we doing?
What do you mean?
Why is some of it in yellow and I can't even read it? What is the idea of this? Who does this?
Can I see that?
Who does? Yeah, you can read it.
Can I see that for a second?
You can read it.
You want me to read it?
Yeah.
We're doing this right now?
Yes.
You want to do this right now?
Absolutely.
All right. Win a pair of tickets to see Pablo Cruz perform at Hellwig Winery on September 4th.
Yes.
All right. For more information, visit SactownSports.com. That is very hard to read with,
keep that.
With the yellow print.
You can keep that
You
for the rest of the show.
All
Yes. It's if people can't see it, you can show it to the YouTube people on your
Look at
camera.
this.
I mean, it's
an eye test. It's a literal eye test.
Usually it's like all just black font.
I have 20/20 vision. I don't have many things going for me physically.
Actually, you didn't have anything wrong with it. You might be colorblind.
Oh boy. That's you.
Isn't that the test?
That would be an interesting development at this stage in my life to go colorblind today.
It's been quite a while. I've been on
suddenly,
Earth.
just
What's
suddenly.
going on? All right, before we get to your question, I've got to get to one more thing about KD, and you mentioned this just a minute ago.
Mm-hmm.
The long-term stuff that I see from some people. Are we supposed to be that naive? I'll give you an example. Brian Lewis of the New York Post. About 15 minutes after the story comes out that KD is staying in Brooklyn, tweets this, just to be clear. This isn't just a situation of the Nets convincing Durant to give them a year, run it back for one season and a championship or bust swing, and then moving him next summer. They plan on this being a long-term marriage. And this is what I would call the oversell within like 15 minutes of a story getting out. Oh, no, we're not just trying to patch this together for the next couple of months because DeAndre Ayton could be available January 15th, which makes it a little bit easier to move some of these contracts. No. This isn't a short-term agreement. We are now back fully in love with each other. After the last couple of months of fighting, we love each other, and we want this thing to work for the next 4 years.
I don't know if you can go from moved out of the house and filing divorce papers to we're in love again and this is forever's without therapy. You know what I mean? Without some kind of therapy in between all that. This was one meeting where this all happened. I find it hard not to say that it can't end up. Somebody compared it today, and I could see this being the case with the Kobe Bryant situation with the Lakers.
Yep.
When it looked like he was not coming back to LA. He was almost traded to the Bulls that offseason. A couple other teams were in on it. I could see Kevin Durant being there long term, but to have one meeting and go from I'm done, I can't coexist with these people to this is the real thing and I want to be here forever, it's hard for me to buy that.
Yeah, same thing happened with Magic Johnson back in the day, like 5 months after he signed the 25-year contract.
Yeah.
And the Lakers, they fired the coach. They said, we're going to stand by Magic, and Magic got his way. But if KD was that upset, just look, one of two things happened, right? Either KD wasn't really that upset about Sean Marks and Steve Nash, and it was all a game. He was trying to bluff the Nets into trading him, and it didn't work. Or, he just lied, and there's no issue. Or could be third option. He was angry and still doesn't like Marks and Nash. Everybody knows it, and they're going to try to coexist for the next year. Good luck to them with all of that. Caldas and Ramie, Sactown Sports. All right, Ramie, you have a question for me. I don't know what the question is. I'm a little concerned. I didn't
want you to be prepared,
right,
to worm your way out of this. Ooh. You know what I mean?
I mean, worm is a pretty heavy, loaded term. By the way,
that's a bad way to put it. I don't mean it in a derogatory way.
Terrible way to put it.
Part of what we do for a living is sometimes we end up in debate, right? And when you give somebody a chance ahead of time to prepare for a debate, they might find a way to answer the question in a way that's not, I've done it before, that's not really answering the question. You know what I mean? So I didn't want you to be able to prepare for that. I asked this question yesterday on the show. I hadn't considered the possibility until I saw it. And man, I'm forgetting who threw it out there first, but David Lombardi quote tweeted it from The Athletic, of keeping Jimmy Garoppolo past the roster guarantee, paying him the full amount of money that he's guaranteed if he makes the team this year, and hope that the trade market develops for him as the season goes on. Somebody's quarterback situation changes to the point that they would find a use for Jimmy G. I hadn't considered that. We hadn't really talked about that. Right. I was just saying keep him around to be your backup quarterback. That combined with his value as a backup quarterback, because as Jed York said on the TK podcast, good football players, especially good quarterbacks, are not easy to come by. There aren't too many of them out there.
Yes.
The value of him possibly being a trade pick, a trade chip, the value of him as a backup quarterback who keeps Super Bowl hopes alive if the worst case scenario plays out. combined with the possibility that they might keep 3 quarterbacks. My question to you, Nick, and I don't think you can answer this question honestly and not think there's a place on this roster for Jimmy Garoppolo. Is there more value in Jimmy Garoppolo or Sudfeld or Purdy to the San Francisco 49ers and that roster spot in 2022?
Right. I would say that it's rather obvious if you're just going, all of these guys thrown in together, who has more value? I would say Jimmy G on the field is a better quarterback than Sudfeld and Purdy. However, I think more goes into that, and that's my point. My point of not keeping Jimmy G on this roster has nothing to do with the football part of it, and that might sound weird, but it has everything to do with what that could cause, what that could create.
Okay, but if you're keeping 3 quarterbacks, I'm not even talking
and
about...
we're not even sure if they're going to do that.
But if they were to keep 3 quarterbacks, I'm talking about in that scenario, Jimmy G has to have more value than one of those 2 guys. Because if you're going to keep 3 quarterbacks, you don't even need him at practice. You can keep doing the same thing with Jimmy G that you're doing now, which is stay off to the side, do individual drills.
Do that.
We'll call you if we need you or if we find a team that wants you.
Can't do that.
And then if Trey Lance goes down, not only is it a good opportunity for the 49ers to keep their Super Bowl hopes alive, it's a good opportunity for Jimmy G to go out there and show his wares before he hits free agency this offseason. You absolutely can't.
Can't do it. If you pay a guy $25 million to stay away from the facility, to stay away from the facility, to not be involved with the day-to-day activity, and then think that you're going to be able to parachute him in as your backup quarterback if Trey Lance gets hurt or something crazy happens.
He knows the playbook.
I would say that's insane.
He knows the playbook.
Let me give an analogy. Imagine if you're working here every day. You're working here every day. You come in Monday through Friday. You're doing the show. You're doing your job. You're doing what's asked of you. Everything's great.
Why do I have to imagine that? Are you saying I don't do that?
Hold on. It's the full hypothetical.
Okay.
I mean, you called me a worm a couple of minutes ago, so no. So imagine hypothetically that you're doing that. Now imagine that this station is paying somebody. Let's see. How much does Brock Purdy make? How much does Nate Sudfeld's what, $3 million? So imagine that the station, while you're doing your job and you're showing up every day to do your job.
Yeah.
Imagine the station's paying somebody 15 times more than you to sit home, not do the job. And then when I get sick or if I have to leave and go, they parachute that person in to do a show or 2. And then when I come back, that person leaves, still making 10 times more than you, and not actually a part of the team, so to speak. You can't have somebody on remote. This ain't like a Zoom. This is not management. Like, you've got to have the guy there.
He can be on the side field throwing to little kids like he is now. He'll stay warm. He'll keep his face in the playbook. He just does. Because if I'm not worried about it, and I don't think Trey Lance would be worried about Jimmy G looking over his shoulder. I think I think Trey Lance is fully comfortable and confident in his place as the number 1 quarterback. But if you think it's a problem having Jimmy G around and what that might do to Trey Lance's psyche, I don't think you have to have Jimmy G around on a day-to-day basis.
I think you do. I mean, I just told you why I think you do.
The money is,
I don't think you have guys outside of the bubble. Football, man, you've got to be in it. Look at what happened with Kyrie and the Nets and how that happened, right? Kyrie was, half the games he's not going to play. He's just going to be back in Brooklyn or, he's going to be hanging out at his house while you guys play, and then he'll be able to parachute on. Look how many problems that caused. And I don't know Trey Lance personally. I don't know how he would handle the situation. All I know is you're just begging for problems. You're begging for issues. The guy doesn't want to be in San Francisco. I don't know why we're trying so hard to keep somebody on the roster when he doesn't want to be on the roster anymore.
Because he has value.
If he had value, he would have been traded months ago.
If he has value to the 49ers, if no one else.
If he's willing to show up and practice and get with the program, which he's not. He has consistently said he doesn't want to be here.
There's that thing of him disappearing for months at a time.
Yeah, like people are trying hard to keep this guy employed. I don't know.
He's going to be employed somewhere. I think there's value for him to the 49ers.
Let him go be employed where he wants to be employed. If he doesn't want to be there and he doesn't want to be working with the team and he wants to be QB1 or nothing, let him go compete somewhere else. You don't want a guy who doesn't want to be there. 916-339-1140 is a text line. Twitter at Nick C Radio and at Ramie is tweeting. Tyrese Halliburton keeps talking 6.5 months after he was traded. Our thoughts coming up next.
Cattles and Ramie. Sactown Sports 1140. Sacramento has a new tag team in the afternoons.
You're talking to the original tag team of ugly pukes here.
It's Cattles. It's Ramie. Sactown Sports 1140.
Got a tweet at Gator McGuire at Sactown 1140. At Ramie is tweeting. And at Nick C Radio. Whoa. Used to listen to Ramie is tweeting on Score North of Minneapolis and then moved to Virginia Beach and regularly listened to Nick C Radio. Mind blown.
Whoa.
And now we're together.
Wow.
Could you imagine?
It's crazy, man.
Could you imagine Tyrese Halliburton still talking about getting traded 6.5 months later? Because, look, I appreciate Hallie. I enjoyed watching him play. By all accounts, very good dude. People that know him will stand by him. I don't know him personally. He treated this city incredible. He said all the right things about Sacramento and playing for the Kings, and he wanted to turn the program around. But my goodness, Tyrese, like, enough is enough. So he was talking to Basketball News. He admitted he felt invincible because he was really playing well, thought there was no way the Kings would trade him. Quote, I'm not going to lie, for a while it was just complete resentment towards, honestly, everybody in the organization, if I'm being quite frank. Who you mad at? Everybody. All right. Even people who had nothing to do with it. It was just resentment towards the organization as a whole. That was so immature of me. It's funny, the other day I was just writing down regrets I have in my life, unfulfilled expectations and resentments. And the only resentment I could come up with in my life right now is the Kings. I don't want to hold on to that. And then he talks about how the trade was a blessing for him. He says the ability to showcase what he can do and play his natural position, which I thought, by the way, that part of the quote, that shines a light on where these guys were, right? I mean, because, Ramie, I know you just got here in June. I could tell you from working here early in the year, there were people that were fighting for the idea of Davion Mitchell, Tyrese Halliburton, and De'Aaron Fox staying together as, a nucleus of a basketball team. And there were people saying, oh, these guys can coexist. These guys can coexist. And I said, don't buy into it. Like, they might say all the right things, but guards are guards. They want the basketball.
Right.
That it's you're not going to have 3-point guards on a team. It's just not going to happen. And now we look at it, right? Hindsight. And even though I think myself and others who did not believe they could coexist were right at the time, this really does prove it, because Fox, post-Hallie trade, played great basketball, played much better basketball, admitted that he felt more comfortable. Halliburton saying, yeah, man, I get to play my natural position, with the Pacers. And so I'm pretty sure Davion Mitchell doesn't want to be a bench guy for his entire career. That was never going to work. You needed to trade one of the three. Halliburton was the guy who had the most value. Your thoughts on Halliburton's comments?
I get it. I've been there.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
I've been there. We're like, you have anger that you know is irrational, like directed at people who, like he said,
Misdirected hostility.
Had nothing to do with it. We're all human. We all go through that. I don't know what's the normal time to sort of get over it. You know what I mean? It has big, I don't care about her anymore vibes when you clearly care about her. You know what I mean? And I know he really didn't want to leave Sacramento.
Right.
He and I said this yesterday on the show, Nick, for whether it's right or wrong. And for my short time here so far, I think it's wrong when you talk about the city and the perception that might be out there. I fought that in Milwaukee for a long time too, the reputation that it might have among NBA players in terms of what they're looking for in a lifestyle. I think that's overblown when you talk about whatever reputation Sacramento has. The reputation they have as an organization, that's somewhat earned when you haven't made the playoffs for 16 some years.
Right.
But that being the case, he still was very much about Sacramento and very much about the Kings. And like you said, he felt very secure in his place in Sacramento. I think he saw that there wasn't enough room in town for him and De'Aaron Fox and Davion Mitchell. But I think he looked at it and went, man, one of these guys is going to have to go.
Yeah, which one of you two going to be out the door?
Which one of these two guys is going to get out of here so we can do our thing? You know what I mean? And then they were like, Yeah, we traded you, dude. I think it was a shell shock to him. I don't think he clearly didn't see it coming at all. And when it is surprising like that, it might stick a little bit more than it otherwise would.
I agree with you. I get why, he feels wronged, and I understand that human emotion. But man, to me, it's, Tyrese, and at least in some of the quotes here, he's talking about, trying to move on. If I was in his inner circle, I'd be like, dude, it's time to move on. And you hit the nail on the head, like the scorned lover thing, right? It's like if you're sitting at the bar with your buddy,
right?
And the girl left him.
I don't care.
Like the first month, it's like, all right, you can do it. But imagine that guy sitting next to you when you're at the bar, like 6.5 months after the breakup, and he's like, I mean, I'm probably better off right now, but it doesn't mean it didn't stink. And you're like, dude, all right. Like,
bro, no one asked you about that.
Yeah, like it's 6.5 months later.
Right.
And I mean, it's time to move on. And you can easily answer the question in that way. Like, as soon as it's asked, you could say, he's been on record. This is like, I don't know, the 4th or 5th time he's gone on record about how he hated getting traded and he was angry at it. Like, tell the reporter, hey, man, that was 6.5 months ago. I've moved on with my NBA life. If you want to know how I feel, go look at those older articles. He wrote a Players Tribune thing all about it. Go reference that. Why do we need to bring it up again? I've moved on with my life.
I literally can't think of another guy who was traded at last year's trade deadline that people are still asking him about it. And as higher profile guys as him were traded at the trade deadline.
Do you think that's because he has shown so much anger and passion?
Sure.
Yeah.
People see an angle.
They think a quote.
They see a quote.
Yep.
And they want to go and get it. And I don't blame them.
This guy is, he's obviously angry. This guy is obviously not thrilled with what happened.
It's like if you feel like screwing with somebody and you walk into the bar and see that guy who's constantly complaining about his ex,
you troll him.
You might poke him and ask him about his ex. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Hey, sounds like something you've done before.
No, I'm not.
Be like, by the way, have you talked to Julie lately? Come on, man. Why are you going to ask me about Julie? That's what Halliburton should have been like, why are you asking me about Julie? That happened 6.5 months ago. But instead he was like, man, it was a tough time. And
yeah, I still hate Julie.
I'm better now, but still a little upset. Like, focus on your present. Focus on the present. Focus on the reality of the situation. Like, I understand, pro athletes are motivated by all sorts of things. They hold on to these grudges, and I get it. It motivates them. It drives them, right? Aaron Rodgers is still driven by sitting in the green room forever. Brady is driven still to this day, being picked in the 6th round. You hear all of those. Michael
Jordan would just make stuff up to be offended by.
Yeah. So that's how it works. But, man, I'm telling you, like I feel like we've reached the expiration date. I don't know when exactly that expiration date is, but 6.5 months to me is well beyond the expiration.
Did they play after the trade? Pacers, Kings, they did?
Yes.
Okay, well, then you should
have. I don't think Halliburton played against him, though. Wasn't he out that game?
Well, let him get that out of his system.
He hasn't been back to Sacramento since.
Okay. So
let him get that out of his system. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he hasn't been here. They played there.
He can show the ex what they're missing. You know what I mean? Like, have that moment of, like, I moved on without you. You know what? Maybe he just needs that. little closure.
All right. Well, let's get him closure quick because I'm tired of hearing him complain about it.
I kind of like it. I like pettiness.
916-339-1140 is the text line. The phone line's 1-800-920-1140. Sactownsports.com is the website. One of the most interesting battles in sports continues. We'll have the latest for you coming up next.
It's Cattles. It's Ramie. Sactown Sports 1140.
Sacramento weather is brought to you by Folsom Lake Kia.
I'm Mark Finan in the KCRA3 Weather Center. Skies will stay clear tonight. We'll get
Gathers and Ramie. Gathers and Ramie. Sactown Sports 1140.
So we were talking about last segment, Halliburton, and whether or not the Kings had played against Hallie after the trade. And I said they had played at Indiana. I remembered that. But for some reason, I thought Halliburton was out. He wasn't. When I looked it up, and Verlad looked this up as well, I saw the numbers and the light went off because I remember that he did not shoot well, but he had a ton of assists. So he was 4-14 from the field. He had 13 points, 15 assists. The Kings won that game 110-109. Buddy Hield had a good game. He shot pretty well. So they did play against him once. But as Chris had mentioned, he has not been here to Sacramento yet. So when he returns, I'm sure that's going to be a whole thing.
I think that's all he needs.
Hopefully.
He just wants to strut across DX with his new gal. You know what I mean? He wants that moment.
I mean, I'm starting to feel bad for the young man. I hope he's able to move on at some point. And if that's what he needs, that's what he needs.
Well, he'll come. They'll have the highlight package for him. He'll get a standing O. And
you think so? You think he'll get the tribute video? Yeah. I think they're giving out tribute videos. A little too willy-nilly.
I would agree
these days. You know what I mean?
I think you've got to be with the team at least for a few years.
I think you got to do something.
Win a championship, maybe.
At least make an all-star game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Win a playoff game to get a tribute video. Maybe I'm setting the bar too high. I don't know.
No, I agree with you.
There's a lot of production goes into it. I almost feel like
it's not about what you and I think. It's about what we think they're going to do. And right. I agree with Chris. I do think they'll have some kind of video. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And so I don't appreciate your tone either.
My bad.
They'll do something for him.
My bad.
All right. So, Ramie, you are really interested in this LIV versus PGA.
Again, I like pettiness.
Battle.
And I like drama.
The game of
I like
golf.
I like chaos.
The changes happening in the PGA. So
apparently, led by Tiger and Rory, they're trying to change the way the whole PGA is operated to compete with LIV Golf. And I said this from the beginning. Say what you want about LIV Golf and the Saudi money and anything else about it that rubs you the wrong way. I think competition is a good thing and spurs innovation. And I don't know about you, Nick. I'm not the biggest golf guy, but I think I could be a bigger golf guy than I am. Like when Tiger first came around, Tiger kind of pulled me in. And then as I learned a little bit more about golf, I was like, wait, Tiger's just not at this tournament. And this other guy who I kind of became a fan of, he's not at, just randomly, these guys don't show up. So now they're going to try to create. And again, this is Tiger and Rory collaborating with the PGA. They're going to try and create an environment where more of these guys are showing up for more of these tournaments from CBSSports.com. One of those signposts apparently will be a series of non-green grass stadium environment competitions supported by Tiger Woods and Rory McIlroy that are spread out across a season and played as one-off competitions starting in 2024, according to Golf Week. While details of these events are scarce, Golf Week reports that the PGA Tour Commissioner, Jay Monahan, is poised to either discuss parts of this venture, if not fully disclose it, later this week. And they say it was presented as a long-term opportunity for players to build equity in the enterprise, which will have private funding in addition to corporate partnerships and sponsors. The proposal was received positively among players in the room, according to a source familiar with the conversation. Basically, and they say that here in this article at CBSSports.com, they're trying to be more like LIV Golf.
Yeah.
It feels what's going on here.
It feels that way.
And if this happens and more marquee golfers are at more tournaments and on TV more regularly, and they're incentivized to do so, guys like me who are just kind of like, yeah, I could get into golf, but just not there, might get there. I think this is a great step forward. And whether you like them or not, you kind of have LIV Golf to thank for it in a weird way.
I think it just opens everybody's eyes to something that had been going on forever. The PGA, they were a monopoly. They had run their business one way, and there was zero urgency to try to change the way that they ran their business because nobody was pushing them.
Right.
Again, they were a monopoly. There was no reason to change anything, you know? It's like if you own a restaurant and you're known for like a meatball sub, and you made the meatball sub the same way for 30 years, and people – They love the meatball sub because it was the meatball sub they knew. And then all of a sudden there's this, sub shop around the block that opens up, and they have a new way to present the meatball sub. They season it differently, and now people are starting to go, oh, that's a little bit different.
Better meatball.
So now it forces you to change things up. In the PGA, they're changing things up because they now have competition. They now have another entity that's like, no, we'll take those guys from you. And it's amazing in some kind of way to see the PGA that's been highly successful, worth a ton of money, do these changes that should have been likely done a long time ago.
Because am I crazy? Or are most tournaments won by a guy who you've never or barely heard of? You're like, oh yeah, that guy. You know what I mean? It's almost never like the dudes on the tour that are winning these tournaments. And I just don't know. Like, imagine you turned on a football game and just randomly quarterbacks weren't playing. You know what I mean? Because quarterbacks almost single-handedly hold up the entertainment value of the NFL. There are like 15 quarterbacks that are a leg post for the NFL. Imagine if just randomly 6 of those 15 quarterbacks on a Sunday were just like, I'm going to sit this week out. It wouldn't be a great product. You know what I mean?
And imagine the PGA, like they're perfectly fine or have been perfectly fine with not having the, big names at just random tournaments. They're like, no, we can deal with that. As long as we got them for the bigger events, we can live with it. So I think it was a glaring weakness, and the PGA now knows that they have to contend. So unfortunately, it's funded by who funds it, the Saudis and all that stuff. We've talked about that before, but it has pushed for change.
I wonder if it's too late, if too many marquee names have already been poached or defected to live, and if the PGA isn't going to let them back, then is this thing already too divided and split to put together what the PGA is trying to do? But the other thing about this that I really like is they're also considering like skills competitions, like a long drive, putting contest.
Again,
I love a skills. I'm a sucker for a skills competition.
These are simple ideas.
I know.
It shows you either the lack of creativity from the PGA over the last several decades, or the fact that they knew their bread was getting buttered. They weren't worried about changing anything. Now it's like, oh, well, now we can do some cool stuff. And now we should actually have our big named players at these other tournaments. Oh, go figure. You imagine.
And happy and comfortable.
Yeah, that's how it works. Cattle's Ramie, Sactown Sports. Quick football thing here with the Raiders. So Kenyon Drake has been released by Vegas. And apparently Drake spoke with Josina Anderson. And here's what he said to Josina, quote, I'm just vibing at the crib right now. I'm just waiting on the next 24 hours. I don't think anyone would trade for me just because of the contract situation. Either way, Raiders have to pay me. I'm at peace. So this guy's like,
great line, man.
He's literally said, you know what? I'm sitting on my couch. My feet, they're up. I'm going to get paid the money.
I got $8 million to not work. Yeah, please. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not worried about it whatsoever, Josina. Thanks for texting me.
Take care of y'all chicken.
He's taking care of his chicken.
You know who he is? He's the anti-Tyrese Halliburton. He's like, I don't care, man. I'm good. I don't care. I'm not what? They didn't want me? Fine. But they still got to pay me. I'm good.
You know what? Let me know the check clears. The check clears, I'm good. I will say this, though, for the Raiders. I like them doing this because whenever a team makes a decision that is truly best for the football team and they're not worried about carrying a cap figure for multiple years. Like Drake's cap hit is like $3.5 million this year, $4.5 million next year.
It's $8 million in dead money.
And they're just like, whatever. Like, we don't need this guy on the team. I think that's a really, really good sign for Raiders fans that Ziegler and McDaniels, they're focused on the right things. They're not focused on, doing what's financially the smart thing. They say, hey, we got to move on. And this is just another one of John Gruden and Mike Mayock's moves that didn't work out, and you eat the money and you live with it.
I think the sign of a good front office is not that they don't make mistakes, because every front office makes mistakes, or in this case, inherits mistakes from a previous regime. It's recognizing them and correcting them rather than banging your head against a wall. You know what I mean?
Rip the Band-Aid off.
Yep.
If you got to move on, you got to move on. Coming up, the risk that Kyle Shanahan took by attaching himself to Trey Lance.
Cattles and Ramie. Sactown Sports 1140.
This is Joe Cordell. In other ads, I've talked about the weighty matters that are on the table in divorce: asset,
It's 1140, the flagship station of your Sacramento Kings. Just two guys rubbing elbows, talking sports, and lots of other stuff.
They always keep you on edge. That's really crazy interesting.
It's Carroll's and Ramie, Sactown Sports, 1140.
All right, so as we get ready for the NFL season, getting closer and closer.
Here we go.
The last week of preseason games this week.
Go.
Lots of talk about last year's quarterback class. You go back to last season, everybody was talking about Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson and Trey Lance and Mac Jones and Justin Fields. And the mystery man out of all those guys is Trey Lance. Like, he's truly the one that we don't know a lot about. So before I get into this idea, because I've been thinking about this the last couple of days, I mentioned it very quickly last week at some point. But the idea that when you really look at Trey Lance compared to quarterbacks with Kyle Shanahan in the past decade or so, he really comes across as the anti-Shanahan quarterback. I'll explain that in a minute. But first, Ramie, your general thoughts. As we're getting closer, we know Lance is going to play one more preseason game. Your general thoughts about him being the starting quarterback this year and what you expect after what you've read and seen so far.
I think Trey Lance has, and I'm not the first to say this, I mean, people are putting him in the MVP race already. I think he has all the tools to be a top flight NFL quarterback. But do I expect him to come out in week one and look like that? No, I don't. It might not be this season before Trey Lance even looks like a top 10 or top 15 quarterback. And that is okay in my book. If you're serious about developing a quarterback, and sometimes you are making the choice. And I think a lot of 49ers fans and people who follow the 49ers don't think this is necessarily a choice that's on the table for the 49ers. Sometimes when you're committed to developing a quarterback, it's a question of, are we more committed to winning now, or are we more committed to this guy being the guy for us and leading us to being a Super Bowl contender for a decade or more to come? You know what I mean?
Right.
And that means having to deal with the growing pains. I think the 49ers as an organization are willing to deal with the growing pains and have tried to pump it back a little bit in terms of people's expectations for Trey Lance and say, hey, we know there are going to be growing pains. You're going to need the defense and the run game to carry things a little bit until he gets things going.
You know, the development of Lance is fascinating because, as you said, as we get ready to chart this guy's growth, which is what we're going to do, we know the nature of the beast. I'm going to try to stay away from week after week these evaluations, right? I expect some ebbs and flows, some ups and downs. First time as a starting quarterback in the NFL as the guy. He started a couple of games last year, but this is his first shot. And what's interesting about this development, Ramie, is, as I just mentioned a couple of minutes ago, if you look at the last decade, Lance is really the anti-Shanahan quarterback. If you were to take guys that have worked with Shanahan, you would not necessarily be able to comp them with Trey Lance. If you're looking at Jimmy G, completely different quarterback. Matt Ryan, completely different quarterback. Kirk Cousins, completely different quarterback. And Todd McShay of ESPN wrote about this recently. And here's what he wrote about Lance. Consistency of ball placement has been an issue for a while with Lance, and it's still a concern. He completed 57.7% of his passes last season. His minus 5.7% completion percentage over expectation ranked 44th out of 49 quarterbacks with at least 70 passes. Lance was also off target on 18.6% of his passes. McShay writes, Lance has the tendency to want to get it all with a big play, but he'll have to learn to trust his coaches and stay within the system. The Niners offense is as on schedule as any in the league, and picking up 3, 4, 5 yards here and there will open things up. Lance just has to buy in and not force the big play when it is not necessary. So, when you look at Lance, again, he's the big play guy. He's the big risk guy. And he's somebody who is not the most accurate, which is much, much different than what Shanahan is used to. He's somebody who's going to chuck the ball downfield. not necessarily worried about those 4, 5, 6-yard pickups as McShay wrote about. And really the only guy that we have as a testing sample for what's going to happen here is RG3. Shanahan was the offensive coordinator in Washington when RG3 was drafted. And if you want to know what RG3 did in his rookie season before he got hurt in the playoffs in 2012, RG3 had a really good season, right? I mean, he was the guy. I remember covering that team in Virginia Beach. It was my first football season in Virginia Beach, and here was, RG3 taking over the area. He completed 65.5% of his passes, 20 touchdowns, 5 picks. His passer rating was 102, which is good. He also ran the football, which is another part of this. 120 carries for 815 yards and 7 touchdowns in RG3's rookie season. So Shanahan does have experience working with the quote-unquote dual threat quarterback. It just hasn't happened in about a decade, Ramie.
I don't think that's by choice, though. I think that's by necessity, because there are so few quarterbacks in this world that can play the position at an elite level. I don't think you'll ever. Now, Kyle Shanahan, he doesn't want to hurt Jimmy G's feelings, right. And no head coach is going to come out and go, I really like my quarterback, but if I could just have, you know what I mean? Like, you'll never hear him say that. But I don't think any offensive-minded head coach or offensive coordinator has ever not wanted the more physically gifted, naturally talented guy. I think most coaches look at quarterbacks and players as a whole and go, give me the guy who has the stuff you can't coach, even if he's lacking in the stuff that you can coach.
The toolsy guy.
I'll get it out of him.
Yeah.
Whatever is in there, I'll get it out of him. When Matt LaFleur first went to Green Bay, because he's off the same coaching tree as Kyle Shanahan, runs similar systems, people are like, man, Aaron Rodgers, yeah, he's a smart quarterback and he'll take what defenses are giving him, but he likes to take those deep shots, and he has the ability to run and use his legs to make things. Is he going to be able to do that in Matt LaFleur's offense? And you found out pretty quickly that, Matt LaFleur is happy to take advantage of all the physical abilities and intangibles that Aaron Rodgers brings to the table and fold that into what is already an efficient offense. But to give it, in addition to its efficiency, to give it that explosiveness and that big playability, no coach ever looks at that and goes, I don't know if I want that. You know what I mean? I think the mold that you're talking about was more out of necessity over the course of Kyle Shanahan's career and less out of they fit what he wants to do. He'll always want the guy with more ability and more natural tools. Any coach would.
Cattles and Ramie, Sactown Sports. And when you look at it, and really it's going to be up to Shanahan to kind of marry both brands of football, so to speak, at least in the beginning, because I do think the early stages, at least, Ramie, and I agree with, if you had a guy who was toolsy, who had all of those raw skills versus somebody who was more refined but a limited ceiling, a lot of coaches would lean towards the potential guy, and that's why we see so many guys get drafted in every sport that has the potential, because, they fall in love with this. This is what he could be. And it's going to be interesting to watch this progress, because if you're Shanahan, I think early on, you want to do, a good job of containing the explosivity a little bit, right? Like, you want to make sure that he's not doing too much, not coloring outside the lines too much, because if he does, that could lead to turnovers, that could lead to issues. And you're not really a football team that is built off of surviving mistakes. You don't want mistakes. You want to play good defense, you want to run the football, and you want the occasional explosive play. And I think the biggest challenge for Shanahan this season with Lance is making sure that Lance understands when to take those shots. And I'm not talking, look, when Shanahan calls in a play and we're going deep down the field, that's obvious. But as McShay wrote, off schedule versus on schedule. In these off schedule plays, we see Patrick Mahomes do it a bunch. I'm fascinated to see how Mahomes does that without Tyreek Hill this year, because him and Hill were always on the right and same page, and Hill would make plays with his legs as Mahomes was making plays. So it's that ability to make sure that Lance, hey, look, man, yes, you have that explosiveness, and we can get some big plays out of this. But if you do it too much, if you go off schedule too often, you can get us into some big trouble. So can Lance be able to take that coaching and rein himself in at times? And how does Shanahan handle that? Because you know it. As soon as Lance makes a big playoff schedule, he's going to want to do it again.
But the called big shots are definitely going to be there. And it's something it's something that Kyle Shanahan has probably been wanting to do for a while now and hasn't been able to. Did you see the stat after the first preseason game of the year? You weren't here the Monday after when we talked about it. Actually, that might have been the week that you were gone most of the week. And they said that ball traveled 42 yards through the air, Nick.
Yeah.
Jimmy Garoppolo has thrown one pass.
Yep.
That's traveled that far through the air in the last 2 seasons.
It wasn't a part of their offense.
But not by design.
No.
Again, by necessity.
Yes.
Kyle Shanahan has been waiting for that Danny Gray touchdown.
Yes.
He's been waiting to be able to call that shot
yes.
at least somewhat regularly in his offense.
No doubt about it. When we talked about it going back a few weeks ago, when I said everybody's looking at, what will Lance do? How can he play? What's going to happen here? And you're not dealing with a very high ceiling with the prior quarterback. You're just not. And the fact is, if you look at how Shanahan called the offense with Jimmy G, he stripped away like 2/3 of the football field. Like everything was short and quick and as safe as humanly possible, which screams to me of a coach not trusting his quarterback. So now it's going to be compelling to watch. Will Shanahan trust the young quarterback more than he trusted the veteran in Jimmy Garoppolo? The other part of this
Trey
is
Lance, they can get a hold of him in the offseason.
Yes,
so
hopefully.
They've talked about
hopefully.
it.
The other part of it is balancing. It's going to be a balancing act as far as running the football. How much do you run with Lance? How much do you? And he's definitely a bigger and stronger guy than RG3. RG3 was not necessarily a big dude, and Lance has got a big frame on him, which helps. But you still have to make sure. All right, how much are we running our quarterback? How much risk do we want to take? Do we want to risk, running them 10 to 15 times a game, or is this going to be more a handful of times? I lean towards handful. I don't like my franchise guy running around in the secondary, and anything can happen when the bullets are flying.
He's a truck.
He is.
He's an absolute beast.
But you've got to make sure that you don't fall in love with that idea and say, he's a truck. He can, we'll get away with having him run the football 12 to 15 times.
But I think until he starts to really master the offense, this is what the Bills did with Josh Allen. You will run him a little bit more because you have to move the football. And if that's a means to move the football, then you're going to use it until you find better, more efficient means of moving the football. So I think, and who was it? Ray McLeod that compared him to Josh Allen when he first came into the league. He was a part of the Bills. So I think you might see a heavy dose of Trey Lance running early on while the passing part of his game is honed.
916-339-1140 is the text line. Phone number is 1-800-920-1140. Your thoughts on Trey Lance really being the anti-Shanahan quarterback, if you look at the quarterbacks he's dealt with for the past decade, attaching himself at the hip with Trey Lance, a different kind of quarterback, a different kind of specimen. Your thoughts, 916-339-1140, at Nick C Radio, at Ramie is tweeting on Twitter. We'll continue with your thoughts and our thoughts on Trey Lance. Also in 90 seconds, does KD staying in Brooklyn make it more likely the Kings will make a trade?
Live and past broadcasts of the Carmichael Dave Show with Jason Ross and Cattles and Ramie. Interviews, podcasts, and trying to get you home after another long day and through the drive time afternoon traffic. Battles and Ramie, Sactown Sports 1140.
YouTube, Sactown Sports 1140. Like us, subscribe. Don't forget to subscribe, build the channel. We get more momentum behind our YouTube. We get to do more things.
Yeah, remember to turn my mic on. It's snazzy.
All sorts of snazziness on the YouTube page. Megadeth Knight tweeting about, or at least posting, not tweeting, posting on the YouTube channel about Trey Lance. We just talked about Trey being the anti-Shanahan kind of quarterback, at least over the last decade. I mean, obviously, Shanahan had RG3 back in 2012 with Washington. And we will get to the Kings in a minute, how Kevin Durant deciding to stay in Brooklyn might affect their immediate future. Maybe more open to a trade, more likely to trade, maybe. But Megadeth Knight, I was bleeped at Shanahan for running Lance so much in his start against the Cardinals last year. Got him injured. Granted, they were thin at running back at the time, but still it became dang near predictable. And this is something I actually brought up in the show meeting today, that if you look at Lance last year, the 2 games he started, against Arizona, he ran the football 16 times for 90 yards. To me, that's too many. Now,
that's a lot.
I don't know how many of those were designed runs. I'd have to go back and watch the game. Obviously, some of them were, I'm facing pressure, I'm just going to tuck and run it. So I don't know how many were called. But I can tell you, the next game that he started against the Houston Texans, cut that number in half from 16 rushes to 8 rushes. In the game before the Arizona game when he started, he went in during that game for the banged-up Garoppolo, shocker. He ran 7 times for 41 yards. So, yeah, to me, when you start running your quarterback 12, 13, 14 times, it's too much for me. I would try to stay away from the double digits. It'll be interesting to see what happens and what Shanahan calls and how he feels about Trey Lance and how much he trusts the young man.
But when you're trying to balance this win now team with developing a quarterback, Nick, and we're talking about working around whatever growing pains or deficiencies might show themselves early on.
Yeah.
I think one of the ways that you work around that or make up for it is by utilizing the things that he's good at. Also, by having a strong defense, so you're not having to keep up with the other team every week, by having a run game that's going to carry some of that offensive load for him. But like I said, when the Bills had Josh Allen and he wasn't great at throwing the football the first 2 years of his career, they saw a large kid who could run fast and tuck it and move the football and give them a chance to win games on a week-to-week basis while the passing part of his game was developing. I think that's part of the balancing act, and that balancing act comes with the risk of putting Trey Lance in harm's way.
Yeah, and Lance has been an inaccurate quarterback in his past. And so we know that Shanahan relies on accuracy and kind of quick decision-making and all of that. And so, again, you wonder if you're not getting the accuracy and the quick decision-making, does Shanahan start to lean towards running the football with Lance a little bit too much? Because we know Shanahan loves the run game. And does he say, hey, I got a quarterback that can run? Before we get to KD and the impact on the Kings, let's go to Arden, who wants to talk about Trey Lance.
Hey there, how you guys doing today?
Good, how you doing?
So good.
You know, I just want to talk about Trey because this guy has done nothing. I mean, you got Kenny Pickett doing some odd games, and Trey Lance got, 87 minutes on a football field?
Yeah, and
I'm sorry. Yeah, how is he like an MVP or something? The guy hasn't even played an NFL game yet. I mean,
yeah, Arden, let me jump in here. I appreciate the phone call. Your phone was going in and out a little bit. It was a little wonky, but we got the gist of what you were saying. I agree with Arden. We've talked about this, Ramie. The MVP stuff, like, I can't tell you what Trey Lance is going to be. I have no idea. I can tell you that he has potential. He's got a big arm. He's a great athlete. He's got a really sturdy and great frame for the position. But we don't know. I mean, he played so little in college. He played at a lower level in college in the FCS. He only started 2 games last year. I do think some people went a little crazy with the preseason game because he threw one pass down the field to an open receiver, and it was a gigantic play, but everybody was like, oh my God, he played incredible in that game. Well, he made one throw down the field, it was nice. But it wasn't like it was, the tightest window in the history of the world. And I mean, I don't want to go crazy over one play. So we do know those plays are going to exist, however. And so it's going to be up to Shanahan, again, to not go too crazy, to not get, too pumped and jacked over those plays. And now all of a sudden we're taking risks downfield all the time. It's going to be, Ramie and I have said it a couple of times, a balancing act. And that's what it's going to be. Let's jump to KD and what's going on there. Cattles and Ramie, Sactown Sports. KD staying in Brooklyn for now. There was this meeting, apparently, between the Nets ownership and their front office and KD. Here was Shams Charania talking about it with Pat McAfee.
From everything I've been told, that the outcome of that meeting yesterday between Kevin Durant, his business manager, Rich Kleiman, everyone from the Nets, Sean Marks, Steve Nash, ownership, they all agreed that it's in everyone's best interest, both sides, to move on. No trade was happening. It was clear. And so for Kevin Durant, if he really wanted to get out of Brooklyn, this was going to get even uglier. You had training camp coming up in 1 month, and that was really going to be the point. Kevin Durant was going to have to decide, do I show up to camp? Do I show up disgruntled, or do I just hold out? And before it even got to that, Kevin Durant met and decided that he was going to stay a Brooklyn Net. I think both sides looked around. From everything I've been told, and the outcome of that meeting was this is in everyone's best interest.
Everyone's best interest. Now, of course, we all know that nothing's happened in the NBA since Durant wanted this trade. Yeah, the Rudy Gobert thing happened, which was just insane. But really, KD has been holding the NBA hostage over the past couple of months. Ramie, does this open the door, possibly, for the Kings to now make a trade before we get to camp?
I think it opens the door for everybody. And we know that the Kings were active, if you believe rumors, before everything came to a screeching halt with the news that Kevin Durant wanted to trade, and everybody sort of sat back and waited for that domino to fall and see what was left afterwards. Because, Nick, we heard not just every team that was involved in trade rumors pursuing Kevin Durant. You went through them earlier, from the Celtics to the Heat to the Grizzlies were the most recent one. The Bucks inquired. Like everybody in the league checked in to see, hey, what would it take to get Kevin Durant? But then a lot of those scenarios included needing 3 or 4 teams to make the thing work. So it really did throw gum in the gears of the NBA offseason and stopped everybody. And I see no reason why, if you're the Sacramento Kings, that you wouldn't still, if business is picking back up again and phones are ringing again, why you wouldn't be back in the business of trying to improve this team and make a significant upgrade if it's out there, like a John Collins, who they were rumored to be interested in before everything came to a stop.
I'm glad you brought up Collins, because that was the name that kind of caused the light to go off in the head. I was reading Shams Charania, and he mentioned that the Hawks offered John Collins and DeAndre Hunter to Brooklyn for KD. Obviously, that trade's not going to make it happen. But the idea was, hey, Collins was somebody who was brought up an awful lot with the Kings before the draft, during the draft, on that day and night. And he's obviously still on the table because he was offered to Brooklyn for KD. And so, you wonder if this gets Monty back on the phone. They've got the contracts with Barnes and Holmes still, and some other contracts they could throw into that. They've got the young player in Davion Mitchell. You do need more talent. The questions I would have, number one, internally, how versatile do you think Keegan Murray is? Because I think that goes a long way. If you're going to trade Harrison Barnes for somebody, you best have an idea of where Keegan fits. And is that the 3? Is that the 4? Is that both? Does he bring you that kind of versatility? Seeing him in Summer League, I think he's more a 4 than a 3. So if you trade Barnes, that means you're trading him for probably a 3. And if you do that, is it a lateral move? Like, who is it? Right. Collins is not a 3, right? So if you traded for Collins, is Keegan and Collins a fit with Sabonis? I don't know. I don't know if Keegan has the foot quickness to consistently play the small forward.
3.
Yeah, right. So who's available, what's out there, and what makes sense. Would it be because if it's a lateral move, then I say just hold on to what you got, get to camp, and see how how it all fits.
Do you think everybody's still waiting on Donovan Mitchell at this point?
I don't think so. I think it's almost like a fait accompli. Like I think everybody in the league knows it's either New York or nowhere.
Okay.
I saw a report today that Miami is not interested in him. So, and it was from somebody who has a really good, past resume and record of insider talk. I don't know which one it was, but I think Mitchell's like New York or bust at this point. At least,
bong.
Bing bong. That's how I feel. 916-339-1140, SactownSports.com. And let me see. The latest on the Raiders' pursuit of Tom Brady. I have a lot of questions for the Raiders.
Was weird, man. The way we found out about everything about this was weird.
Everything is weird. We'll get into it next.
Cattles and Ramie. Sactown Sports 1140. One guy's trying not to throw furniture. That's a personal foul. While the other's still trying to find some. Cattles and Ramie. Sactown Sports 1140.
You got me all in on this Twitter beef happening between two people. You ruined my life now for the rest of the night.
My bad. Went down that rabbit hole, huh?
Yeah, you're making me.
I just saw it and I was like, ew, I don't like either of those guys. Go ahead and beat each other up. It's fine. I don't need to even know.
You were like, I couldn't care
I don't
less.
even know what it's about. I'm glad you're both mad at each other. I'm glad both your lives are not good today. That's fine.
I'm glad you're both miserable, so enjoy that. Anyway, so Dana White was on ESPN Saturday night. My quick 10-second take on the UFC on Saturday night, because I know a lot of you couldn't care less. One of the most amazing sports stories happened on Saturday night. Like you don't have to be a UFC fan or a fight fan to appreciate what happened on Saturday night. It was real life Rocky by a dude whose nickname is Rocky. It was insane. Leon Edwards has fought for a long time. He gets a title shot against Kamaru Usman. Usman is seen as pretty much the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world. He's won a bunch of fights in a row, 15 or 16, whatever the number was. He was about to break Anderson Silva's record.
Mm-hmm.
And Usman dominates Leon Edwards for the entire fight. First round, you could probably put towards Edwards, but rounds 2 through 4, all the way until about a minute left in the fifth and final round, Usman dominated the fight. And Leon Edwards literally had one chance with under a minute left to land the Hail Mary of all shots. And dude landed a head kick and knocked out Usman. It was a real-life Rocky story.
Did he get cocky? Did he get comfortable?
Usman? No, so I don't want to get too deep in the weeds.
Okay.
He was expecting Edwards to do something, and Edwards did something different because Edwards waited until that moment to throw that kick. And he's known as a highly technical stand-up guy, and he literally had that in his back pocket. And here's the Hail Mary, and whap, knocked him out cold. And it was a real-life Rocky moment. Dude cut a Rocky Balboa-like promo after the fight, and he's on the phone with his mom in the hallway, and he's crying his eyes out. It was, again, you don't have to be a fight fan to truly enjoy a story like that. Underdog all the way, gets dominated, and under a minute left, lands the miracle kick that wins him the championship of the world. It was an amazing moment.
I'd hate to play semantics here, but it was a Rocky 2 moment.
Yes.
Rocky lost in Rocky.
Yes. This is Rocky. Wow. I meant Rocky the character, not necessarily Rocky won the film, but yes.
You just had to be that guy.
Hey, I didn't want someone texting us in or tweeting us saying, hey, Rocky lost in the first movie.
You know, somebody would. Right? Somebody would be all over that. But yeah, it was a real life.
Do you have an Adrian there? Do you have an Adrian in the crowd that you could holler at?
No, I don't think he did. But it was a crazy moment. And the other thing that happened that was crazy on Saturday night, aside from the fight, and unfortunately for Leon Edwards, like this story took really the headlines of the night. And Dana White, the Gronks, for whatever reason, with I guess it's Omaha Productions with the Mannings.
It's like a Manning cast.
Yeah, it was the Gronks watching UFC. And I don't know why you would go to that when you ordered a fight for like $75. I don't know why you would go to
Rob Gronkowski's commentary.
Yeah, watch them talk about it. But of course, Gronk, as we know now, asked Dana White about the time White was working on a deal with Brady and Gronk to go to the Raiders. And White said, yeah, that's what happened. And then last second, John Gruden pulled the plug. So, of course, post-fight, White was asked about it, and here's what he had to say.
I didn't want to talk about that, no, but he sort of sucked me into it on live TV. Yeah, it's true. And you know, I talked Brady into playing for the Raiders. And Gronk was coming with him. And they were negotiating the deal, and they were really close to getting it done. And then Gruden pulled the deal, and Brady was not happy about it. Neither was I. And yeah, and that's that. He went to the Buccaneers and won the Super Bowl. box there. I wanted Brady at you know what I mean? Crazy. But yeah, it's true. And I thought that I would never tell that story publicly, but what the hell Gronk was doing tonight that he brought that up. But yeah, it would have been amazing for the city and would have been amazing for the Raiders. I mean, their first year there, they got Brady and Gronk, so yeah.
He sounds so deflated by that story.
Why was White involved?
I have no idea.
Why?
I asked the same thing yesterday. Who is Dana White?
Mike Mayock, John Gruden, Davis, the owner of the team, Mark Davis is.
He's a Vegas guy. I mean, so maybe he's just like trying to do something for his
Wayne
city.
Newton was busy, so they were like, Dana White will get involved here. Who else has a residency? Bruno Mars put a call in.
He has experience in a boardroom or a negotiation room and brokering these things. You know what I mean?
It's just like, how did
it's weird, but on some level, it kind of makes sense.
Did White call Mark Davis and like, yo, Mark, I got something for you. I got Brady and Gronk lined up. And by the way, Davis was asked about this because I have no idea why White was involved in an NFL negotiation like that at that high of a level. And Davis said, like, oh, I heard about White's comments. He said this to the Las Vegas Review-Journal. That was, 2 to 3 years ago or something? I don't know. I have no idea. Yeah, like you don't remember.
That's something you just forget.
Yeah, like Dana White was negotiating with Rob Gronkowski and Tom Brady, and you're like, well, like 2 or 3 years ago, I totally forgot about that. I don't know. He says, Dana has stories. I love Dana. He's a great, great promoter. Why would this make me upset? I was busy watching the Raiders and the Aces basketball game. So Pro Football Talk came out and said Davis knew about this, which of course he did. He's the owner.
What?
Like, of course he knew.
But he said he didn't.
It's like, no, which does he realize how bad that makes him sound as an owner? Like,
right.
Oh, no, I don't remember that. Dude, it's Tom Brady.
I know what that is. You know what that is, Nick. It's plausible deniability. You know what I mean? You can't just come out and say, yeah, I tampered. You can't do that. I don't blame him. I know what he's doing, but I'm also not an idiot, and I'm not going to fall for it.
It's like, yeah, we could have had the greatest quarterback of all time, but John Gruden said no, so we didn't. And by the way, is this because of John Gruden's gigantic ego? Right? Like, because I think Gruden was here's my theory on why Gruden said no. Because remember, it's not like Gruden loved Derek Carr. He grew to like him.
Right.
But especially the first year or two, Gruden did not like Derek Carr. He threw him under the bus a billion times publicly, and they would yell at each other on the sidelines. The only thing I could think of, honestly, is that Gruden said, no, if Brady comes to Vegas with Gronk, he's going to change my offense. And we know Gruden was all about his offense, right? I'm an offensive genius. And I think he was concerned that he would have to move to a more Brady offense and get away from what he has run and took himself over Brady and said, at least I have Carr who's willing to run the offense that I want to run. If I bring Brady, it's Brady this, Brady that. He's going to get his say.
But if you're Brady, you dodged a bullet by not coming to Las Vegas.
100%.
I don't think they're good enough to win a Super Bowl.
No.
Even with Tom Brady.
No.
And you didn't have to deal with that whole John Gruden nonsense.
And remember, they always say, like, I know Gronk was like, oh, it's true. It's going to happen. But you are usually you're the hero in your own story.
The NFL has to look into this, don't they?
I would think so.
Especially like if this was just Dana White, maybe
Dana White flying around the country cutting deals for people randomly.
Maybe you don't investigate, but Gronk clearly knows, and Gronk obviously close to Tom Brady. Gronk clearly knows something went down here. If you're the NFL, you have to investigate.
They were both free agents though, so I think right. Yeah, Gronk had retired already.
Yeah,
right?
he signed with Tampa as a free agent.
No, he was traded to Tampa.
I'll
take that back.
Yeah.
So Gronk, yes. Brady, no. Brady was a free agent. Gronk, yeah, tampering, 100%. But
that's why Davis has no idea.
Yes.
Well, again,
selective amnesia.
I could see it with Brady. That's a good point. That maybe he's like, I don't remember because he knows he's stepping in it.
Yeah.
Because the Patriots, I think, got a 4th or 5th round pick for Gronk going to Tampa.
Oh. Dana White was just doing something on his own.
Yeah, Mark Davis had no idea.
By the way, Davis never helps himself, though, with public relations. The dude's the worst. Like, remember, like, the whole Gruden email thing, and he was like, he just botched that. He does not know how to handle really anything in the public eye.
When he is sitting in that hotel lobby with his backpack on.
Yeah. If someone should just be like, hey, man, come to the games and hang out. But when you're not at the games.
I was going to say, the one thing I do like about him is dude goes hard for his team. Like, you can tell growing up with
jogging pants and bowl haircut.
Yeah. Who was it? Who was the Raider that went into the Hall of Fame this year? And he went there wearing the dude's jersey. Like, no other NFL owner went to the Hall of Fame.
He's crushing wings. Remember they showed him crushing wings one day? He's just sucking them off the ball.
Man, you're right. He does fumble the PR ball often.
He's a disaster.
But you look at some of the stuff they've done in terms of advancing some of the social issues that face the NFL, plus how hard he goes as a fan for the team that he owns. There are some things to like.
Well, I mean, the social issues. I mean, the Gruden stuff.
No, I know. But there's also been a lot of progress thanks to Mark and Al Davis.
That is true,
right?
That is true. He could have done better. He could have done better with the whole Gruden thing. Anyway, 916-339-1140 is the text line. YouTube, Sactown Sports 1140. Check us out. Don't forget to subscribe. Who did KD call out on Twitter? Find out next.
Who didn't he?
It's Cattles. It's Ramie. Sactown Sports 1140.
What do you do to stay in shape?
is the new spot for local sports talk in the afternoon. Cattles and Ramie. Sactown Sports, 1140.
KD had beef on Twitter. Shocker. But first, before we get to that, speaking of Twitter, Ramie, how many people on Twitter do you follow?
2,775.
2,775.
Is that a lot?
We'll get to that in a minute. When's the first time that you kind of met me?
Late 2019 or
Yeah.
2020?
Yeah, right before the
Yeah.
the COVID.
You were the problem.
That
was the Makloff magic.
Here's my beef with Ramie Makloff. Did I not do enough to win you over? That you follow almost 3,000 people, and you did not follow me until I hired you for a job.
I don't even know who I'm following. During the break, the reason this came up, I was like, why aren't I following Pat Beverly? He's one of the most entertaining people in the media.
Do you just black out and start following people?
No, I just, they give you the suggestions on the side where it says who to follow. And sometimes I'm like, oh, yeah, I should.
That's all you need is the suggestion.
Almost, yeah. Or a good tweet. I'll see a good tweet that somebody else retweeted and ended up on my timeline. I'll go and look at it and be like, this person's good. I like this person. And then I'll follow,
I'll defend you, Ramie. I'm guessing that Nick came up a lot on your timeline, correct?
What are you saying? I tweet too much?
No, I'm saying that he saw you on his timeline every once in a while, so you just assumed that you were following him.
Oh, that will happen too. Yeah, I don't know if that necessarily happened with you, but that'll happen.
Phil Mackey on this?
That'll happen where
You're gonna blame Mackey, aren't you?
No, that'll happen where somebody will end up on your timeline so often because people who you follow retweet or like or whatever the case might be that you just assume you do follow them.
Right.
I once muted my producer by mistake. I still, to this day, have no idea how. I went and I looked at his profile randomly someday for some reason, and it said I had him muted. I was like, when and how did this happen?
I don't even know if Verlad has a Twitter. Do you have a Twitter?
I think he does.
I keep it on the lowdown.
Yeah, okay.
I think I follow you, don't I?
Say.
Didn't I follow you?
No?
I follow JJ.
Is it like a burner thing? Like, would I not even know it's you? Like,
JJ has the most random tweets. Like every 3 days, he'll just throw a random tweet out. But
is that you?
It was funny because
Okay.
It was funny because we were talking about it during the break. I said, Ramie, how many people do you follow? He's like 2,775. He's like, is that a lot? I'm like, well, I follow 317. That gives you an idea.
Part of this is playing,
just like going crazy.
Part of this is playing the numbers game, though. You know what I mean? More people you follow, the more followers you get.
Yeah.
I'm creeping up on 10,000, by the way. If anyone wants to help me get there.
At Ramie is tweeting.
Ramie is tweeting. Ramie.
At Nick C Radio
is tweeting.
Speaking of Twitter, KD. This is not surprising. If you have followed KD at all over the past few years, you know that he is apt of jumping on one of the social media apps and going back and forth.
I love it.
And the story comes out that he's returning to Brooklyn. And, of course, he went right to Twitter.
Well, he didn't. Patrick Beverly did first.
Well, he had to go. Yeah, that maybe the notification popped up on his phone.
Sure. Yeah.
Maybe that drove him there. But here's what happened. So Pat Bev tweets out, y'all can't sit. No, y'all can sit and don't say nothing, but that ain't cool. It's dudes with families out here who haven't got a job because of this KD bleep. And to be on and off ain't cool. Blessing, gang.
Pray your hands basketball emoji.
Yes. Yeah. Can't forget the emojis. Mm-hmm. KD quote tweeted that. # blame KD. Pat Bev responded, damn, gang. Who said I was talking about you? I'm speaking of how it was done. Both sides need to keep that private, but noted with the emoji of the pencil and the pad.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on the Pat Bev KD thing first? Because we have another one.
Well, I love that KD is just – he wasn't even tagged in it. And I love when athletes will find tweets that they're not even tagged in almost immediately because this was literally within 2 or 3 minutes of Pat Bev
Did not take long.
Did not take long. He's just sitting there searching KD or searching Kevin Durant and trying to see who's got his name in their mouth. And he saw Pat Bev and so fired shots right back. And Pat Beverly was like, dude, I wasn't even talking about you. I wasn't blaming you. I was saying the situation that you're involved in and the way that it was handled. I love it.
Then we had Jordan Hicks. Jordan Hicks versus KD. Hicks tweets out at KD Trey 5. Not a single tweet to explain yourself, just pettiness. But then want to get mad when reporters try and figure it out. but then want to get mad when the rest of the league's tired of you, but then want to get mad when people fry you. I defended you before, but you really are soft. And KD responded to that. I don't have to explain myself to Jordan Hicks. Who are you again?
That's a great tweet. That's a great tweet by Kevin Durant.
But didn't he just prove Jordan Hicks right?
On some level, yes.
It's just like, oh, man, you're not even important enough for me to reply to.
Which Jordan Hicks made a point of and said, it did give me some exposure, though, and for that, I do appreciate you at KD Trey 5. LOL, to which KD said, a lot of men out here are doing anything to be exposed to the rest of the world. It's insane how much you want to be seen. I don't know about you. I got to take KD's side in this one, at least in this one. And when he asked, who are you again? I went and scrolled over Jordan Hicks' profile to see who is he. And man, we were just talking about like followers and all. He has 925 followers and a blue check mark for, as he says it, I do silly stuff for Spectrum News 1 Texas sometimes. How is Jordan Hicks got the blue check mark and getting responses from Kevin Durant?
You don't want me to talk about the blue check mark.
Who is he?
I've been on Twitter forever. I don't have a blue check mark.
Don't knock the blue check mark.
Do you have one?
Yeah.
What? Maybe I have to follow 3,000 people to get a
probably
blue
have
check
to talk to Charles in digital.
I mean, let's get Charles Watkins on the case. He might be able to help me.
Sorry,
Chucky Watkins.
I didn't know that was a sticking point for you. Or sore spot.
Oh, no, it's not. I mean, it's just I think it's ridiculous. It's a completely arbitrary process.
I don't think so at all. I think it makes perfect sense.
Completely arbitrary. Completely.
And very meaningful.
It's nonsense.
And I thank you, Twitter.
Can I just say, though, that some of this is people just dump on the player who's involved. Like, KD is not necessarily at fault for these initial leaks. Like, he's not responsible for he might have tried to do this behind closed doors. Publicly, again, he stood up for Steve Nash. Now, you could have an issue with him publicly doing that and then going behind the scenes and saying it's either him or me, but we don't know who leaked this stuff. Like, KD might have just been like, yeah, I want out. And then went on vacation and then played basketball, pickup ball in other places. Now, I do think later in the process, they 100% try to leverage. And that's why the whole it's them or me thing came up, because I think KD realized it was going to be more difficult to trade him than he thought. And I don't buy into this theory that this causes any kind of further damage to KD. Like, it's baked in. We know KD's on Twitter.
Yeah.
We know he goes back and forth with people. It's not like every time a tweet comes out, you're like, oh my God, KD. It's just it's already documented. It's who he is. So I don't think this further damages him in any way. But shout out to Jordan Hicks, who got some.
I personally kind of like it.
Who got some
I
pub.
said. So
got some pub. Trey Lance has had an up and down camp, which begs the question: is it all about good defense or bad offense? Our answer's coming up next.
Cattles and Ramie, Sactown Sports 1140.
This is Joe Cordell. In other ads, I've talked about the weighty matters that are on the table in divorce: assets, debts, spousal support, and of course, children. But here I want to talk to you about a troublesome issue that arises early and often in the divorce process, but which attorneys, including myself, say too little about, and that's the cost of a divorce. Yet as important as this factor is, it shouldn't overwhelm the more deserving issues that are raised by divorce. But here are just a few things that Cordell & Cordell is doing to help. We have now reduced our initial deposit or retainer. Also, there's no longer a charge for initial consultations for those who retain. And finally, we now provide on the front end a maximum fee pledge for certain modification and support.
The new Fords have arrived at Folsom Lake Ford. I know you've been waiting for a new F-150 or maybe an Explorer or Expedition. Guess what? Folsom Lake Ford has them. Your truck headquarters for over 30 years right here in Sacramento is all stocked up with new Fords and used vehicles.
Our business technology Toshiba Studios. Sactown Sports 1140, the flagship station of your Sacramento Kings. Sacramento has a new tag team in the afternoons.
I'm talking to the original tag team of ugly pukes here.
It's Cattles. It's Ramie. Sactown Sports 1140.
Are we doing the finger thing? No,
finger
we're not
thing?
doing the whole the whole college
We can
football
do that
thing.
if you
We're gonna
want.
do that.
Sure.
I don't feel like you like that.
I'm down with it.
Doesn't feel like you're into it. Verla's not into it.
No.
I feel like if I had JJ here today, I might have some more help. Might be 2 versus 2.
I don't know about that.
No?
No.
You think JJ's anti-fingers?
Probably.
Okay. Verlad?
I was more of the
Shut your mic off, Ramie.
the 3.
Like the 3? Like the... Oh, like the...
Oh, the 3.
the 3
like
thing.
that. Okay.
The 3 thing.
Try glasses.
That works.
The 3 thing. Anyway.
I mean, the 4 is perfect, so
it is.
tough to beat that.
It is. The 4 is good. The 4 horsemen. That's what
Maybe we do that at the 4 o'clock hour.
Do we put the 5 up for the 5?
That's what I was just gonna say. If we hold up a 5, I think that makes more sense.
We start with the 3? Do we starting the show with the 3? Is
it's
weird.
weird.
Though.
Yeah,
It
it's
is.
weird.
Anyway,
All of it's weird if you think about it.
it is all weird. Up and down camp for Trey Lance, right? I said this last hour, Ramie. I don't know if you agree with me or not, but I do feel like some people overreacted to that first preseason game. Like, yeah, he threw a pass downfield, had an open receiver, nice play, fantastic. But everybody was talking about him performing in that game like he did some like unbelievable things, and up until that pass, he really wasn't that effective.
I mean,
and you
in
know,
people's defense, Jimmy Garoppolo threw the football that far once in 2 years. Like
Right.
it's people go, oh,
but we're
ooh.
I mean, which also I think makes my point when I talk about Jimmy G and Trey Lance. Like, yeah, exactly. When you're using Jimmy G as the benchmark, it's not really a high ceiling you have to hit, frankly.
Thing with Jimmy could throw the ball and throw it real far.
Oh yeah. Oh, you could throw it real far. That's
clear
why
over them mountains.
That's why you always had him throwing the football far. You always had him doing it there. Yep. He's always chucking it. Always chucking it downfield, that Jimmy G.
I love that quote. He sounds so unconvinced of what he's saying.
Oh no, he could throw the ball. He could throw the ball real far.
Real far.
How far? Real far. Really far. He throws it far. But how about the new quarterback, new starting quarterback? Here was Shanahan a few weeks ago talking about Trey Lance.
When you're a good athlete, I mean, since Pop Warner, you've been running around making plays. And I say it all the time. People win Heisman's running around making plays. And then you get to the NFL and you're like, they're going to want to run around and make plays, which is awesome. You don't want to hold that from them, but you're going to also have to learn how to play while you do that. And I think that's the challenge for a lot of these guys, because you're going to resort to what you've done. And that's what I like with Trey, because I've seen both. I know he understands that he's got to work at both. And that's something him and I and the rest of the team will work through together.
So there is Shanahan talking about Trey Lance and the challenges that he faces going against the Niners defense. And, of course, eventually other defenses. Now here was Shanahan talking about his defense.
I feel real similar with our defense right now as I have the last 3 years. I mean, since our Super Bowl year, going into that year, I thought we had a chance to be real good. I thought we did in the COVID year too, and I thought we did last year. And we have 2 out of those 3 years. The COVID year was tough with the injuries. But I'd say a little bit of the difference this year with our defense is I feel we have a little more depth. You know, we played a lot of young guys, especially in the secondary last year, which was great because they got experience. But we've also brought in some new guys too, to where if we have a couple injuries and we put in young guys, at least they played before, and I think that goes a long way.
So Shanahan talking about the quarterback, the young quarterback, and taking risks and all of that. That's one side. He talks about his defense and depth and how good they've looked, etc. That's the other side. And it's really been up and down. I mean, today, Lance was good. I wouldn't say great. I think he completed like 10 of 17 or something for a touchdown and a pick. Yesterday, he had 3 interceptions, not 1, not 2, but 3 picks against the Niners defense. Here was D'Amico Ryans, defensive coordinator, talking about whether or not his guys are hunting for picks.
It hasn't been stressed much of what we did last year, because to me, it doesn't matter. What we did last year, we had a different group of guys out there, all right? And then last year is last year, right? How good can we be as 2022 Niners defense? How good can we be? And that's what we're challenging ourselves each and every day. Can you be better than you were your last practice? All right. Can we go get the ball more than we did the last practice and the last game we played that's our challenge to us this year.
So the up and down play of Lance during camp, you heard from Shanahan, you heard from Ryan. Ramie, when you look at what Lance has done just the last 2 days, because I do think it's a perfect illustration of his camp. Do you look at it and say bad offense, or do you look at it and say good defense?
This is a good thing. This is a good thing. Because if Trey Lance, second-year player, first-year full-time starter, 4 games in the last 1,000 days, 20 meaningful games since he played high school football.
20.
If he walked out onto that field and was tearing up this 49ers defense, I know the whole world would be going, oh, my God, what do they have in Trey Lance?
Trey Lance is the greatest ever.
I would be sitting here going, there's something wrong with this 49. There's something seriously wrong with this 49ers defense. They should be dominating Trey Lance right now. They should just about be dominating Trey Lance in practice on a pretty regular basis. And like we keep saying, Nick, there for as much as people want to make him a bust right out of the gates or put him in the Hall of Fame right out of the gates, there doesn't seem to be any in between. You and I are two of the few who are sitting here going, they're going to be growing pains. They're going to be struggles. There's going to be things that look good. There's going to be things that look bad. While that's going on, the defense has to be the backbone of this football team. I've made this analogy before. If you watch, I don't remember what I watched some documentary about the Buccaneers and the Super Bowl that they won a couple of years ago, and Bruce Arians flat out said, he's like, look, Tom Brady and this offense, it's going to take about 10, 12 weeks for this to gel and for everybody to figure everything out. We need the defense to carry us while that's going on. That was Tom freaking Brady, dude. That was a guy who came in with 6 Super Bowl rings, and Bruce Arians was telling his football team, you have to give him time to figure things out. You have to give him and this offense time to gel and figure things out. If that's the case with Tom Brady, that's definitely the case with Trey Lance. You want the football or the defense to be the backbone of this football team right now and dominating a first-year starter in Trey Lance. This is a good thing that we're seeing.
The thing that's interesting, because you just bring up Brady in Tampa, the thing that's interesting is, of course, Lance has been here already. He's had, 2 off seasons to look at the playbook, but I'm not sure how much of the playbook he was actually practicing. Because remember, as we've mentioned, with Jimmy G, even though Kyle Shanahan tells us that he could throw the ball real far, they limited themselves offensively. They handcuffed themselves. They did not trust Jimmy G to throw the football real far. So how much of this playbook, and of course, Garoppolo is not a running quarterback. He's not a dual threat guy. Even if he was a running quarterback, you do not want him to run because he gets hurt all the time. So how much of the offense that we're going to see this year, this is one of the most interesting questions about this football team. How much of the offense that we have seen in the past couple of years with Jimmy G will we see with Trey Lance? He's a different kind of quarterback. It goes back to what you and I discussed last hour. He's kind of the anti-Shanahan QB when you look at the last decade of Shanahan's coaching career. Shanahan has dealt with pocket passers, guys that are accurate, guys that will get the football out and just move the chains. Lance is a different kind of cat. So I don't know how much of this playbook Lance was comfortable with when they started to go through this camp. It could be a completely different camp because he's a completely different quarterback. The reality of good O or, bad O, good D, I think it's a little bit of both. I think you've got some good defensive talent, especially on the defensive line, especially if Javon Kinlaw can stay healthy. But as you mentioned, Ramie, we've discussed this, the idea of the ups and downs. And if I would not expect, and look, if this is what happens, you feel great as a Niners fan, but I would not expect Trey Lance to be nails every week. I would not expect him to throw for 300 every week and run for 75 and have, 3 or 4 touchdowns. He's going to have some of these stinkers. If I'm a Niners fan, I am expecting at least a few clunkers, at least. So I lean towards bad offense more than good defense, because I do think you have an inexperienced quarterback. I mean, to say that the guy's played 20 games that matter since high school, it really does put everything in perspective. Like, this is not somebody who, played a couple of years at a high level against big college programs.
Right.
Doesn't mean he can't do it at the next level. It just means he played like almost nothing of a college career.
Trevor Lawrence played as many games at the NFL level last year as Trey Lance has at North Dakota State.
It's crazy, right? So you got the inexperience. I also think if there's truly one thing above everything else that I do have some concerns about with this team, it is the interior offensive line. And you can even stretch that out now with the McGlinchey thing and whether or not he's going to be healthy by the beginning of the year. This offensive line outside of, Trent Williams has some questions. And so when you look at the defensive line and the talent on that end of the field for San Francisco, guys are going to get home a lot, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
And Trey Lance, I do think, has done a decent amount of running for his life in this training camp. And look, that's fine when it's training camp, but when the regular season begins, and even this final preseason game coming up this week, you can't leave your quarterback out there like a sitting duck. So I do think that there are some questions about this offensive line. Now, fortunately, you don't have to play against, defensive lines very often as good as San Francisco's and have somebody like a Bosa out there. But I would be concerned about that O-line. Not panicked, but concerned.
Anytime you have three starters right next to each other, no less, in the middle of your offensive line, there, like we're saying about Trey Lance, there's going to be growing pains, and there's going to be time for them to figure that out if they can figure it out. That's honestly, Nick, more than Trey Lance himself, more than obviously Kyle Shanahan. I'm very confident in him as a coach. And I said this yesterday on the show. This is coming from a Bears fan. I know how to break quarterbacks. I've seen it time and time again in my life. I know the recipe. And the first item in the list of ingredients in the recipe of how to break a quarterback at the NFL level is put him behind a bad offensive line. So, and I don't think it'll be a bad offensive line necessarily, but I think just like with the quarterback, it's going to take time for that to get where they want it to get and the final product that they're looking for. And that could stunt a guy's growth, if not destroy him altogether, if it becomes a long-term problem.
You can have somebody who is completely ready for everything. And if you've got a bum offensive line in front of you, and I'm not saying that's what the Niners have, but if you have a bum offensive line, a mediocre offensive line, you're going to get in trouble really quick, really, really quick. Just like Jimmy G. Throwing the football really, really far, you get in trouble really, really quick with an offensive line with some questions in front. 916-339-1140 is the text
really
line. Phone number is 1-800-920-1140. This up and down camp for Trey Lance, do you think it's more about good defense or do you think it's about bad offense? We'll get your thoughts on that. Also coming up in 90 seconds, is today's huge news in the NBA good or bad for the Kings?
Sactown Sports 1140 is your home of the Las Vegas Raiders for the 2022 NFL season. Cattles and Ramie. Sactown Sports 1140.
We got a giveaway for you. We'll do that in a minute. But I feel really bad because my guy Ramie, the last couple times that he's been getting ready to do this open mic at a place that's nearby.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm a no.
And then
and it's not you.
In this place, it depends on the plus, right? If you have +1, +5, +10, if you bring people, it's one of these old tricks.
You have a better chance of getting stage time.
If you bring a crowd, they let you on.
People with you, and I don't know people.
Because if you bring a crowd next week, you know, they built in business.
Right.
And so Ramie knows nobody, like you said, outside of this building.
Right.
I don't go out during the week. I just don't. Like Monday through
That's
Thursday.
a hard and fast rule.
Yeah, like I'm a hermit.
You're not going out during the week.
It's very difficult to get me out during the week.
All right.
Kings game and stuff, like a game, I can do it every once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm a homebody Monday night through Thursday night. So, you know.
I would love to be a homebody.
My only vice is like craft beer.
I gotta go hone my craft.
If I go out, I know them, but I probably,
gotta get these jokes off.
Sling back a couple.
You know what I mean?
Just don't want to do that during the week.
Okay.
So I feel bad because, like,
all right.
Ramie needs the plus.
It's fine. It's okay.
So if any listeners want to drive to our building and wait outside, Ramie will personally drive you to this venue.
The show's not till 8. Don't come meet me here. The show's not till 8. It's in Midtown.
Meet him in Midtown. He'll tweet out an address.
Tweet me at Ramie is tweeting if you want to be my +1 to get me into this open mic tonight.
I'm telling you, if it was Friday night, Saturday night,
sure,
I'd be there in a heartbeat. Sure. Do we have what's next week? Oh no, you're not going to be in town.
I won't be here next week. I will be at the Laughing Tap in Milwaukee all next weekend. Though.
Great. If you want to see Ramie do comedy, you can fly out to Milwaukee next week.
5 shows.
Check him out.
LaughingTap.com.
Look at you. What's that like next week's schedule? When do we not have? We don't have a show on
next
Wednesday.
Week we don't have shows. What Tuesday?
See what you did? See what you did?
Sorry.
Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, no show.
Yeah, I know.
I could have gone.
That's why I took that time.
Wide open.
To go back home. I'm getting paid for it that week. This is just free tonight.
I feel bad.
It's okay. Vlad, why are you out so quick? When
Vlad's like, no.
What is that all about?
Is it at the place you said it was going to be at last week?
I don't know. I don't remember what I told you last week.
I feel like this is an off-air conversation.
Yeah. Say it in my ear. Just say it in my ear, and I'll tell you if you're right.
You can chat.
No. Different place. No. Different place.
Okay. Should I not go to that place that you just mentioned, Vlad? Is that a no fly zone for us?
I mean, it's not bad. It's just I wouldn't want to hang out there.
So it's bad.
No, it's not bad. It's just like there are closer places here.
All right.
Yeah. It's
I'll tell you the place during the break, and you'll probably still know.
Yeah, let's move on. I don't know about endorsements and ads here and relationships. I don't want to get anybody angry at us. Win a pair of tickets right now to see Alice in Chains, and yes, I will get to the Kings in a minute. But first, got to give away these tickets. Win a pair of tickets to see Alice in Chains and Breaking Benjamin perform at the Toyota Amphitheater September 7th. For more information, visit khtk.com. Text line, Vlad, what's the word?
Chains.
916-339-1140. Chains. You text the word chains in, and one of you will be a lucky winner and win a pair of tickets. Win a pair of tickets to that show I just mentioned. The Alice in Chains Breaking Benjamin show, Toyota Amphitheater, September 7th. You can visit khtk.com for more information. So there you have it. So, KD, we've talked about this a couple times. It's a couple different ways today, Ramie. He, for now, is going to stay in Brooklyn for now. Is that good or bad for the Kings?
For the Kings, in the immediate future, probably a good thing. Partly for the reason we talked about in the 4 o'clock hour, which I think this opens the floodgates a little bit now on the trade market, and maybe a deal out there that could make the Kings better and another roster upgrade before the season starts. But also, like, Kevin Durant being in the East is a good thing for everybody in the West. For your chances of hitting whatever it is you think your ceiling is as a franchise, whatever you think that is for the Kings, you have a better chance if there's zero chance of Kevin Durant getting in the way of that, because the dude can single-handedly almost wreck a team and wreck a season when it comes to big moments in the playoffs or even games that will get you into the playoffs.
Yeah, I think it matters too, though, when we look at this question, because I agree with you. Generally speaking, KD out of the West is, not being in the West is good for the Kings. because the West, as we've talked about, is already going to be a murderer's row. So that's good. But it also devils in the details. Like, what would that team have to give up to bring KD in? You know, like if you added KD to Phoenix, but Phoenix had to trade Bridges and Booker, or, you know, it depends on the type of deal. Now, I know the whole Ben Simmons contract thing with Book. I get it. But the subtraction, the addition, what would that look like? But generally speaking, yes. And I also think we talked about this, you know, earlier in the show, Ramie. I think this opens the door for Monty to jump back into the trade talks. And if somebody's out there available that he's interested in, it makes all the sense in the world that now that KD is staying in Brooklyn, at least for now, we can have those conversations. Because a lot of teams were waiting, you know. They were waiting to find out, hey, are we going to win the Kevin Durant sweepstakes? Or do we have to, you brought this up, do we have to jump in as a third or fourth team?
Mm-hmm.
Because there were so many different trades thrown out there.
Or if you're interested in somebody off of the team interested in Kevin Durant, and we're the other 2 or 3 teams that's going to need to be involved in that deal, they're waiting and going, hey, we can't pull the trigger on anything until we know what's going on with KD.
So it'll be interesting what happens, if anything happens, over the next month or two before we get into camp season. I can't wait, by the way. Can't wait for NBA camp, NBA preseason, the NBA season to tip off. We'll get a good idea over the next month whether or not, you know, KD was truly holding the league hostage, or if it was just a Rudy Gobert trade and now it's really difficult to make deals in the league. Cattles and Ramie, Sactown Sports. The other part of this, Ramie, is the domino effect of Durant and how that's going to affect the rest of the league. Because, again, going off of the premise that a lot of teams were waiting for KD and what was going to happen, one of those teams, the Lakers. And Shams Charania was actually on the Pat McAfee show earlier today. And I don't know where Chris Verlotta is. Chris, you ready? Ready for this?
Yes.
Going to go Shams on LA. Here goes Shams talking about the Lakers on the Pat McAfee show.
I think as of right now, the Lakers are open to anything that will make their team better. And so if there's a deal out there, if they can go get multiple different players that makes the team better. You know, I would keep an eye on Patrick Beverley, Bojan Bogdanovic in Utah.
Bogdanovic?
That'd be a get.
Bogdanovic.
Those are the types of guys that if you can go get 2-3 rotation players, plug onto your team, kind of get better with the sum of parts, I think those are the types of moves I think you're going to see the Lakers try to make. I don't think that they're done necessarily. I think they're going to still try to get this team better. But yes, Kyrie Irving to the Lakers for now is not a thing.
How else does this impact the league, Ramie? Like, I mean, what could we see happen here now that KD is going to stay in Brooklyn for now?
You know, LeBron doesn't want the Lakers to rest, even though they're not getting Kyrie Irving. And we've heard the rumors about Buddy Hield, possibly, along with Miles Turner, being a Laker at some point, then maybe even be willing to give up 2 first-round draft picks to do that. I asked earlier, you don't think this necessarily opens the door for a Donovan Mitchell trade? I think it might. If you were a team that was interested in getting Kevin Durant and now know that you can't, maybe you're willing to put some of those assets towards a Donovan Mitchell. Then when you just look at the picture of contenders in the NBA, Nick, I know I've called the Brooklyn Nets the what-if champs for the last 2 years because all we hear is, oh, man, what if Kyrie played? What if KD didn't get hurt? What if this? What if that? I mean, the bottom line is that's a lot of talent there, and especially if Ben Simmons is out on the court, despite how much we all like to clown on Ben Simmons, that guy was an NBA All-Star at one point. There's a lot of talent. There's a lot of ability. They've upgraded that Nets roster, not knowing whether or not KD and Kyrie would be back. That's a team that's a championship contender now, and I don't think the NBA even thought that was the case if you look at the national TV schedule and the Christmas Day schedule. So there are a lot of ripple effects potentially from Kevin Durant staying with the Brooklyn Nets.
The one thing, like, right away is that the Eastern Conference is a bear at the top.
Yep.
You know, we talk about the depth of the Western Conference, but I agree with you, Ramie. Like, these pieces, if they could get them to fit, they could fit. Ben Simmons, we talked about it when that trade happened. If he gets on the floor, stays on the floor, being surrounded by shooters, you know, Harris and Irving and KD and Mills. And so, surrounding that guy with shooters, he's going to help them defensively and help them on the glass. You're now looking at Boston, Milwaukee, Philadelphia, Brooklyn, the upper class, the top 4 or 5 teams. Very, very difficult road for any team that wants to get through that conference. I think the Western Conference has more depth and is more dangerous because of that. But the tippity top of the Eastern Conference is no joke. And so, Brooklyn, they're going to be compelling. They're going to be great television and great fodder for people like Ramie and I, because we'll see what ends up happening. You can argue that they could be champions. You could argue this thing's going to go completely off the rails within the first 2 months of the season.
And for as unfocused as Kyrie Irving can be sometimes on playing the game of basketball and has his interests elsewhere, something that'll lock a lot of people in. I don't know if it will Kyrie Irving, mess with their money. And I think Kyrie Irving got a taste this offseason of how uninterested people are in him.
Yep.
When it seems he's uninterested in basketball. He could have gotten a big deal this year, whether it was from the Nets or somebody else in some sort of sign and trade. And the entire NBA said, thanks, but no thanks, Kyrie. And so he knows now if he wants the big deal, he's got to show some level of commitment that we haven't seen from him in recent years. And if he does that, if he applies himself to the game the way Kyrie Irving can apply himself to the game, along with Kevin Durant, along with Ben Simmons, along with that roster that they've built up, that can be a dangerous thing. We'll see if the money does light a fire under Kyrie, though.
You'll never guess what this baseball fan got caught doing on video. Find out next.
Not that one.
The start of the NFL season is upon us, and Sactown Sports 1140 has all your coverage. Monday Night Football, Thursday Night Football, and of course, all the NFL action every Sunday. It's the new spot for local sports talk in the afternoon. Cattles and Ramie. Sactown Sports 1140.
Lots of video of people doing things at baseball games over the last 48 hours or so. There's one of those videos that we will not discuss. No, we want to keep our job.
I had it in my notes.
You can keep them right in your notes. Keep them right where they are, my friend.
Okay.
Because our radio death will be swift and painless, but it will happen. But there's there's a couple of videos out there. But let's talk about the more innocent one.
Okay.
So there's a guy at the Yankees game, and I don't know how many people have seen this. We have ESPN on in the studio, and I can tell you that ESPN has shown it on like almost every show.
I've seen it at least 10 times.
Yeah.
This today on ESPN.
But people are working, and they don't have the they don't have the good fortune of having ESPN on in the room that they work in. So there's this video of a guy at the Yankees game, and he's using his hot dog as a straw. So he takes the straw and he
hollows out the middle of the hot dog.
Yeah, he hollows out.
Straw.
Well, not the entire middle of the hot dog. That would have been a lot of work. But
no, he did. Because otherwise, how could he get liquid all the way through?
Because it's just like the straw.
Yeah.
It's the width of the straw.
He hollowed out the size of a straw. Yes.
Yes.
In the middle of the hot dog.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So he hollows that out, and he puts the hot dog in the beer that he has sitting next to him, and he drinks the beer through the hot dog.
The hot dog straw.
What's happening here? Outside of what's happening, as I just told you, he's sticking a hot dog in the beer. But what is truly happening with this individual?
Absolutely disgusting. That's a borderline crime.
Joey Chestnut, you gotta relax.
People are saying this might be staged because it's the same guy who caught the Yankees fan dunking his hot dog in beer last year. And then there was a third weird food thing that happened at Yankee Stadium that this guy also captured on video and tweeted out. So it's weird that this guy keeps catching.
He just sits next to all the people that do weird things at Yankees games.
These weirdos. But if it's real, dude, that's foul. You don't use a hot dog. And I know hot dog, beer, good together to wash it down. You don't use a hot dog as a straw, man.
First of all, before I even get to the idea of using the hot dog as a straw, I have a serious issue with somebody drinking beer with a straw. It's not what you do, okay? Especially when you go to a ball game. But I have never drank a beer via a straw.
I've heard it. If you're trying to get somewhere, it'll get you there quicker.
I've heard that
too. You know
too.
what I mean?
I've heard that too.
Right.
But it's just weird to me. Beer does not go with straw. Straw does not go with beer to me. I have seen a couple of friends do what you're saying.
Fair.
And they try to, get to the end goal quicker.
Right.
Which I don't get either. Like,
I don't understand that either.
Yeah, that's like, to me, is like a 16-year-old, 17-year-old thing when you might venture into that the first time. You go, oh, yeah. I mean, come on. I'm a little too old for that garbage. So the straw for the beer thing is the first weird thing about it. The second is, how do you realize this is a thing? Like, what do you think this guy's thought process is?
He wasn't like kind of like he wasn't trying to invent something.
Yeah, this was not a creation on the fly.
Yes.
This was something he had done
like
multiple
he had done
times.
this before. Yeah,
because
it looks like he's had some trial and error.
The efficiency of creating the hot dog straw was actually
impressive.
Very
on
impressive.
some level, yeah. But then you got like chunks of hot dog floating around in your beer, dude. Like it's not. That can't be good.
Do you think somebody taught him this, or was this just naturally gifted to him?
Had to have been taught. I feel like
when
that's
he was
something that has
birthed
to
into
have
the
been
world,
taught. Yeah,
it was like that guy
I
could
feel
take
like
a
that's
hot
something
dog.
that dad passed down. You know,
You think it's a dad thing?
I don't know. I don't know where you discover that.
I get like you said, the beer brought thing and the you kind of have a hot dog and a beer when you go to a baseball game. This guy just decided to like combine both all in one fell swoop.
When I go to the movies, I will bite both ends off of a Twizzler and use that as the straw in my soda, and highly recommend it.
How's that any different?
Highly recommend. What do you mean? How is that any different? It's not It's not tubed meats that I'm sticking into a beverage. What do you mean, how is it any different?
As if soda just wasn't enough sugar or Twizzler wasn't enough sugar. Why not combine both?
I try to live a pretty healthy lifestyle.
Oh, I can tell.
I watch what I eat, but God, I love sugar.
Say Twizzlers.
Sugar.
I don't have a thing like that.
Really?
I don't have, unless it escapes me. I don't think I have like a weird kind of food,
weird food thing. I have another weird food thing. And I know how weird this sounds, and I know how weird it looks when you do it. I will make, like, if I make chili, I'll make a peanut butter and chili sandwich. See, I knew it. Don't knock until you try it, bro. Just like the beer, the hot dog straw.
I mean, I kind of want to try it now.
Should. I'm telling you. Oh, it's so good.
You throw a party at your place and you'll make peanut butter and chili sandwiches for everybody.
Do people eat chili out here when it's 189 degrees? Is that a thing?
If you're sitting in AC, I would think.
It was always a thing I made on a cold day back in the Midwest. Do we do chili here?
You probably couldn't feel anything. That's why you thought it was great. Like, your taste buds were frozen. You're just like, gumming your peanut butter and chili.
Good. Everybody in the media is trying the hot dog straw today. Stop it. I'm tired of looking at people sucking on a hot dog. It's weird.
Music behind us tell us we need to go around. Thanks to Chris. Great job as always. Ramie's done talking. We'll talk tomorrow, though. Cattles and Ramie, Sactown Sports.
Keep your heart. Man, these girls are smart. 3 stacks, these girls are smart. Play your part. Play your part.
The new Fords have arrived at Folsom Lake Ford. I know you've been waiting for a new F-150 or maybe an Explorer or